While we sleep, the guardians of the night take to the streets, having said goodbye to those they love. Each other knowing they may never say these words again, they face the evil that we run from. They dedicate their lives to those that would hate them because they wear the badge. They wear the badge not for the glory or recognition, but because they were born to honor the thin blue line. This is the LEO First Podcast. We'll talk to the men and women in law enforcement, those that have retired, and anyone who's impacted by law enforcement. We'll peel back the curtain, and you'll get the real stories. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Every law enforcement officer has a story to tell. Get ready to hear from the men and women who put their lives on the line every day for their communities and their country. Welcome to the LEO First Podcast. Now, here's your host, Michael Laidler.
Hey everybody, it's Michael Laidler, your host of the LEO First Podcast. Today I'm in Seneca, Ohio with Sheriff Fred Stevens. Now, Fred Stevens, he's been in law enforcement for a little bit of time, 33 years in law enforcement, plus another 11 years in the Army. So for all the veterans out there, he is an Army guy. I'm not an Army person myself. However, I do appreciate all the services and things you've been able to come and do. Today, like every other podcast, we're here to learn about Mr. Stevens over here. Fred Stevens, what has he been able to do in leadership, but also how's that blending with the family and things he have going on. You guys know one of the things we always try to do in the podcast is try to humanize the badge and let people know that at the end of the day, we're people. Simple as that. It's no point to overthink the process, but it's important to have these conversations with leaders, especially ones that are over whole offices, because it's important for you to see that this is just a regular person like me and you, and they go through things and they develop different things throughout their life that makes them better. So once again, welcome to the LEO First Podcast. I'm going to stop my rambling because I think I'm so excited to be in Seneca, Ohio today that it's not that cold. It's only in like the 40s or 50s, and you guys know I'm from Texas originally. Well, I'm from Miami originally, but I live in Texas, and anything under 50, we're usually like we're not coming outside, so I can come outside easily. All I have to do is have this jacket, shirt, and pants on, and it's actually not that bad. I might have to come back again. Not when it's snowing or cold, but I'd have to come back because it's not freezing as I thought. So, Fred, tell us about you. What makes you who you are today? And you can take it from any aspect.
Well, thank you for coming to Seneca County, Ohio, and putting on the presentations. You are fortunate. Our first date, we had to cancel out on the location that we had. Otherwise, he would have been in negative temperatures down here, and we had some snow alert levels going on. So, very, very grateful for you coming in February for us. So, like you said, I have about a total of almost 38 years public service. And I say public service because I started out at 17 going into the Army right out of high school. I graduated when I was 17, spent my birthday at basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. That's a birthday, yes. Yeah, and in August, so Georgia in August. So somebody from Ohio that's used to the four seasons, and we don't get that kind of humidity and heat. But no, so my whole career has been about public service, and that's driven me, I think, to succeed. The Army gave me my core values, my leadership skills, and then I carried it on into the police field. I started in Tiffin, Ohio, which is the main city in Seneca County, the largest city in Seneca County. My career back in 1993 as a patrolman. And then worked my ways up through the rank, and eventually became chief there in 2012, and did 8.5 years as chief, and then ran for sheriff in 2020 and was elected in 2021. So I started out here at the sheriff's office January 1st, 2021.
Man, in 93, what was I thinking? Where was I at? It's actually where it was that beginning phase of me really believing in law enforcement and wanting to get into it because we started having the O.J. Simpson trial, all the stuff going on in California. So for me, I was just like, I just want to be in law enforcement. I mean, what I told myself early on, and I'd never been able to accomplish this, and I won't at this point, I wanted to be a homicide detective in L.A., whether it was L.A. County Sheriff's Office or the PD. After seeing the O.J. Simpson trial, I was like, you know what? I just have to get on the scene. I just want to go investigate murders. Come to find out, that's not that exciting. Especially looking at dead bodies and looking at different things, like that's nothing that is very good for mental health. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm here. I talked about self-awareness, talk about leadership. So in your 38 years of public service, where have you seen this industry come, especially in the mental wellness side? Because I know that's been a big trend over the last 2 to 3 years, but obviously 38 years, I have 19 in this year. Where have you seen like that trend change?
So over the 3 decades I've spent in law enforcement, I've actually seen it progress. As we started out our careers, you would handle calls and then you just move on to the next call. And those critical incident calls, whether it was, a serious injury accident or a fatality accident, or if it was a fire and people had died in the fire and you could hear the screamings, if it was the infant that you're trying to give CPR to, any type of those type of calls, you just sucked it up, pushed it down, moved on, Charlie Mike to the next call, and continued your shift and deal with it maybe later, maybe in your retirement. That's what we were kind of all taught, we were all told, and you did the choir practice, you did all the other stuff. And then now, over the years, at least in the last decade or more, you see the statistics that we learned today in your presentation, but we all knew in the back of our minds about the high suicide rates, the high divorce rates in our profession, corrections, dispatch, law enforcement, criminal justice in general. And the wellness part, I think we're a little ahead of the curve here, at least in my last agency and here, when I was chief, really focused on the officer wellness and dispatcher wellness there. That's all I had to deal with there, and I had a few civilian staff. Here, you have corrections. They're seeing it every day, even more so sometimes I think than our road deputies who get those, dog nuisance calls or whatever. Those aren't really critical incidents, but they're dealing with, the ones that aren't able to be out in society every day, every shift that they come in. So I think it's even more crucial for on the correction side. I know that's part of your background as well. So I've seen it change over the 3 decades, but more so in the last decade, to where that is the hot button topic should be of every executive, of every chief, every sheriff should be providing some type of wellness help to their staff. I know we all have EAP programs, but that's not always the best thing. And it has to start from the top down. If it doesn't start from the top down and they don't feel that you have a true interest in it, then it's just another program on the wall, or another saying on the wall, like your mission statement or your vision. If you don't believe it, if you don't walk the walk, if you don't talk that talk, then it's just another check, a box to check.
And it's easy to bypass that kind of thing. Because you have, we only talked about one aspect of your leadership role. We just talked about mental wellness, but what about budgets? What about calls for service? What about citizens complaining about this? Bad use of force? Like anything you can think of that can and that has, kind of complicated, focus on ourselves.
It does, because if you think about it, so you have a critical incident that, a large part of your patrol handled, then there's also dispatch that handled it. The clerks that are seeing, the talk around the station on it or the office on it. So to do a critical debrief, you have to hold them over or bring them in the next day. You bring in the free help, those groups that are out there, the CISM teams and stuff like that are in your area. But your people aren't coming in voluntarily. Some of you have to mandate to come in. Yeah. So now there's overtime. There's put people on administrative leave if it's a particularly nasty, maybe it's a shooting, officer-involved shooting.
Correct.
So there is a budget aspect to that. Just because you could write a policy, we're going to do mental health for all our staff. Whatever your numbers are. You could have 5 people, you could have 100, you could have 1,000, and you just write a policy. So you check the boxes for your collaboration for your state that we have a policy on mental health and we do this. We get them help. We ask them if they want help, but do you mandate that they get help, or do you just ask? Yeah. In our business, I'm okay. Yeah. Just let me sleep on it. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll do my shift. So there's mandated certain things that we do to make sure that they at least go and sit there. They don't have to talk. They can just listen, but they do have to go to at least that first initial visit. We have to have a critical debrief of everybody that was initially involved and then peripherally involved. I think of an incident we had at the sheriff's or at the police department that was combined. It was the police department and it was the sheriff's office. We had an active shooter. And after the incident, one of my police officers, when I was the chief, had shot the perpetrator and killed him. But everybody that was involved, and a deputy had got shot during this incident as well. And so now I'm out here on the other side, but we invited all the persons that were directly involved. That was the first critical debrief. Then we invited the spouses and the dispatchers, everybody else, because they need to be taken care of as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's crazy how many people are impacted by any critical incident. Or what's even nowadays, I know that critical incident, what it was at least years ago, was just, the homicides, the very violent things. But now it's starting to expand to, well, if you go to this kind of a bad call that might, or that can impact your mental health, that changes everything. And I love the fact that although people might say I'm okay, you still require them to be there. Because most of us, if you've ever been in law enforcement, military, any kind of background that's considered high stress, I'm okay is a common response because you just want to get through it. But as time's developed and you have great organizations out there that do research and they look at mental wellness, it's coming to find out that when people say I'm okay, they're really not okay. I see things on like TikTok and Instagram, and it's funny, I see these memes or like the reels, and it's people not in law enforcement that's doing these videos. So then I start thinking about, what if someone in uniform did I'm gonna okay type of video and say, well, no, I'm really not okay. I'm going home to drink a 6-pack every night because I'm trying to hide my emotions, or I'm gonna take more Vicodin than what I need to, whatever it might be, to kind of just hide it, or I'm gonna seriously gamble, whatever kind of negative responses. But the fact that you guys put them in that environment, even if they're gonna sit there, things go through people's brains. Whether or not they realize it, they're still gonna at least think about it and think about help. But if they're not forced to go, if you just say, oh, I'm okay, and let them just hit the streets, that's gonna build up. But you guys are doing a great job by like having that. And what kind of shift have you seen since you started requiring people to come to stuff like that?
Well, one of the things we've done over the last 3 years is the attempt to change the culture, it's not just come in, do your job. If you don't want to do your job, there's, other places that are hiring kind of attitude that was
I can't
prevalent,
stand still people.
Not just here, but in other
Everywhere,
agencies as well. And so you have to be a more, that the buzzwords of the servant leadership, the empathetic leader, and stuff like that. But it's authentic leadership, though. You can't just tell people you're empathetic. You can't tell people that I'm here to serve you. You have to actually show them through your actions. Like today, having the mandatory all staff split up into 2 sessions, going to a mental health leadership type course that you've presented to us in the first session today so far. So those are the kind of things that I've seen in the shift in the people here, that the turnover has slowed down, the buy-in of the actual the office mission statements, the vision, the core goals, which, by the way, when I ran for sheriff, I looked on their website, I looked on their the slim annual report that was turned into the commissioners, and nowhere on there was a mission statement. Nowhere on there was a vision statement. How can you lead people if you don't have a direction?
And I see that in this room right now. You got the mission statement, vision statement, and core values hanging on the wall.
And those aren't mine. So one of my first jobs for my chief deputy when I brought him in is to get a core group of volunteers, do the email, hey, let the chief know if you want to be on this committee.
Correct.
Your first chance to give input on the direction of this office. And we had a cook on there, we had a maintenance person on there, we had a dispatcher on there, we had a patrol deputy on there, and we had a corrections officer on there, and then a sergeant that was leading it up, and the chief was also leading it up as well. And over a course of 3 months, because they went back and forth and they did through emails, they came up with our mission statement, our vision statement, and our core values, which means something. It's not just a writing on the wall then, but you have to reinforce that all the time, so.
Yeah, and I look at stuff like, I know a lot of agencies, offices, departments, whatever, organizations have different mission and vision statements, but it's cool when you know that people that are currently here had a say-so in it. Like you said, it ain't just about enforcing, but get people involved, because you can, some places have been around, and I think you were saying this was your 200th year.
Seneca County Sheriff's Office is 200 years this year, 1824 to 2024.
Yeah, so obviously at some point there was a vision and mission statement at some point, but it's good that it's been revitalized to the current people
hope,
here. Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic about it.
So am I.
Yeah, maybe someone just said, you know what, we don't want this hanging on a wall, so we're just going to take it down. But at some point in 2 centuries, it probably was one. But you get the other organizations that they've had the same vision and mission statement since day one of whatever that might be, and they never modify it. But fortunately, since you didn't see one at all, you was like, why don't we get the people involved? Could you have obviously generated your own? Of course you can. I mean, you're the sheriff. You can do that kind of stuff. But you get buy-in from the team, being, like you said, all the way from your top to the correctional officer, police officer on the road. Everybody involved. It's like, you know what? That's us up there. And then that culture is also, they're going to spread that to the other people like, hey, you know what? I did that. And people like that stuff.
Yes.
So when we look at all this culture and all this building, and like I said, I'm very appreciative that you brought me in. Obviously, we met through Paul Butler,
yes.
Great speaker. You're changing the culture, and what you're doing, I don't see a lot, and I don't know if Paul can contest to it, but you don't see a lot of leaders bringing in external speakers just to make sure their staff gets something. So as you build your culture, what kind of advice or what would you say to other sheriffs or chiefs of police about that kind of strategy? Like, how have you seen it improve your sheriff's office?
The biggest change I've seen is the relaxed working atmosphere that we have here. Mm-hmm. Everything was walking on pins and needles and glass. You know, was I going to be the next person yelled at or disciplined or terminated? Kind of attitudes that has gone. You know, you're in a good environment when you can walk out of your office or you're sitting at your desk and you hear people talking in the hallways, communicating, laughing. You know, go by the break room and people are joking, you know, with each other or whatever. We're in a profession that we are all adults. We know when to be serious out into the public eye. But when you're back here, you can let your guard down a little bit. You're supposed to be able to do that.
Correct.
I look at the role of the sheriff or chief or any head of any organization is to be the chief cheerleader for that organization. You should be singing the praises of your people. And if you don't have praises to sing, then you need to do some self-reflection of what am I leading or what am I teaching these people if I don't have praises to sing on them, because they all do a magnificent job every day of the year. And I mean everybody. You can't just recognize the road patrol every single time they save a baby or do something like that. There's good work being done by your maintenance people, by your cooks. We just last year I recognized the cooks for the 3 years that I've been here. You know, we passed every single federal inspection. We're a federal agency as well. We hold the ICE detainees. We've passed every federal inspection. We've passed every state inspection. For the first time, we were state compliant, you know, in over a decade. And their health inspections always passed, and with the minimal amount of equipment and broken down stuff that they had. So they all got office citations for that. And that was nice. The first time that we have people that have been in that kitchen for 20 or 30 years, they said they've ever been recognized. You know,
wow.
It's stuff like that, you know, going back there, saying hi to everybody, knowing all their names. You know, you may have 100 employees, but you know all their names. You know when they were on, you know, FMLA leave or whatever, hey, how are you doing? Sending them text messages while they're on FMLA leave. Going to see them if they're in a local hospital, you know, and just showing them that you care. So the culture part of it comes, again, from the top down, but you got to have that buy-in, and the buy-in comes from you selling yourself, selling the agency, selling the vision, the mission statement that they came up with, that you had a little bit of help with putting those committees together, but then you back off and let the people be the people. You know, you got great leaders leading without rank. We've talked about that. We've talked about and one of the things I've said on day one, we brought Paul Butler in, national speaker, you know, changing culture stuff. On day one, when I swore everybody in, and I mean everybody, most sheriffs don't swear in the non-sworn people.
Yeah,
I want everybody to be on the team. We're all on a level playing field. So I swore in the cooks and the maintenance and the dispatchers and the correction officers that are non-sworn as civilian deputies. Non-sworn was sworn in that way, but it says right on there, and I make fun of it after we swear them in, right underneath, in front of these flags, whatever, invite their families in when they're hired, the new hires and stuff. But it says right on their thing, can't carry a gun, can't make arrests. Sorry, can't let you do that.
Yeah.
But they're part of the team.
Correct.
It's an official document. It gets filed with our clerk of courts.
Correct.
So it tells them how important that I feel that their position is and this organization feels, because these chairs are going to change. I'm not going to be sheriff, you know, in another term or so. And so the next sheriff coming in, I want them to understand that, you know, You're part of this family. You're part of this team. And when you talked about, that educational part or that feeling a part of an organization instead of just being a number or logging in and logging out of your shifts, it goes a long way when you have that walking around, management by walking around kind of philosophy. I read all the books. You got to go outside of your agency. You got to bring in speakers that will talk about the tough stuff and not just about a specific, we can only have training for the road deputies. Or when the dispatchers go to training, it's only the dispatchers. Or, the correction officers need to go to just mandatory training. I have too many people, it's going to bust my training budget or whatever. You got to figure out how to make it work and make everybody feel involved.
Yeah, get creative. I mean,
Get
like
creative.
I said, like training like this, we got creative. I mean, the standard that we usually go by is, we're going to do an 8-hour training,
Right.
2-day training, 3-day training, and we can only get 30 people in there, give or take. But why not try to get everybody just a little bit of a message?
Correct.
We've already talked about how just having people after a critical incident, just putting them in the room, just to hear is part of the process. So same thing with different types of training, you just bring people in. So before we get too far off and before we have to close out, you said a word, and when I hear this word, I always get excited, family. So how do you balance, especially being a sheriff? I mean, it's always easy for me to ask someone that's not at a higher leadership role for the organization to balance out. And I'm not saying it's easy for them to balance in general, but it's different levels. So how do you balance out as the top leader of an office?
So I haven't always done the work-life balance thing. That's a new term to me, coming from the military side. And then starting late in law enforcement career. I was 24, 25 when I got out of the military, active duty military, and went into the reserves. But starting taking me a couple years to get a full-time law enforcement position, starting through corrections and stuff. So I always thought I was behind the 8 ball. So I had to do more than the next guy or the next girl. Because, any trainings they had, anything, and I was trying to raise a family at the same time. 4 kids, my wife, the yeoman work, I was on midnights or afternoons for 18 or 19 years of my career at Tiffin. And so the work-life balance was, and I stress it now, but I wasn't always a follower of it. But it's also a double-edged sword. So after that first year, or the second year of bringing in that sheriff I talked to you about mental health and about suicide and having that work-life balance, whatever, we had I won't call it a rash, but we had a few resignations and stuff. People that said, you know what, that really resonated with me. I didn't plan on doing this for X amount of years, but I'm going to go do what I want to do, because of that work-life balance and stuff. So in a way, we're bringing these things for the mental health aspect of it, but in the same token, good for you. If this isn't what you truly isn't your passion, then I don't want you working with
especially in
inmates.
this industry.
I don't want you working at dispatch. I don't want you working, because if you're going to get overloaded and then you're going to have a breakdown, then you're not doing yourself any good. You're not doing the agency or the community any good. And one of the things I've always stressed and came up with back when I was a part-time village police chief is community first, department second, and unfortunately your employees third. And I don't mean that in a bad way when I tell them that, but you made an oath and you signed up to be in public service. So we have to put those other 2 things first. So yourself doesn't come first. And when you have that work-life balance, it's been tough. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I had probably practiced that, because I would have done more. So I have those regrets of not being able to do everything that I wanted to do, but there's also, my kids see that I did go to their things. Not as many as I probably could have, because you got to get some sleep before you go into 10-hour or 12-hour shifts. But I do stress that now, because it is important. This is a different generation. We talked about the generational gaps and stuff earlier today, and they are looking for that work-life balance. They are looking for that culture of family, and do they feel part of that? Is there not just I'm not just a number at that agency? So it's been difficult for me personally. Better for me now that when you're at the top, it's a little easier to have that balance and stuff, because I don't have the kids at home anymore. I can do more work than I need to, and then have some relaxation time and stuff. But it still is a balance throughout your whole career to get that in there.
And the one exercise we did, we talked about balance, and we talked about what would you do if you had two more hours in a day. And most people would just say sleep, or what would you do if it was your last day on this planet? What would you do for one day? Spend time with the family. So I didn't hear anybody say work more or finish reports. It was all more, you know what, we need the balance. Because it's the right thing for the big picture. Because if you have a family at home, everybody retires, resigns from an organization.
Oh, yeah.
Who's going to be there? It's going to be your family. So, and people have memories. We've established that. People remember things. So if your children or your spouse or your parents always see you at work, when you're there, they're like, well, why don't you just go back to work?
Right.
Like, I mean, they love you to death, but the same thing you want from them, you have to give back to them. So that emphasizing the work-life balance, you're right, it's sometimes a double-edged sword because you don't know what people are going to do, because they might say, you know what, I need to be home with my family, and they might leave. But
we had a handful.
Yeah, but you know, as a leader, you're giving the right message, because once they leave, you allow someone else to come in that has the time to do it.
And maybe we saved them down the road of being one of those statistics.
Correct.
Because they had that training, it clicked with them, and they like, you know what, I'm getting out while they're getting out.
Yes.
Before it affects me so much that I think my only recourse is to leave this world.
Yeah, and it's a real thing. I mean, it's a real thing. A lot of people, they stress out, so that's why they leave.
It is not the easiest job. Dispatch, corrections, you know, being a cook you're locked up with them the whole time you're here. So, I mean, you might as well, you know, be a correction officer because you're dealing with them as well. So none of our job in criminal justice is easy. And I look at when I was at the police department and now as a sheriff, leaving a legacy. And I look at what are people going to remember that I did here. They're not going to remember me, but hopefully they remember the programs, the stuff I got in their contracts to protect them, the policies, the directives and stuff, the mission statement, the core values. And then I said this at the first session, you know, over those 200 years, we're standing on the shoulders of the people that were before us, the men and women before us. And so we need to continue that so this agency, Seneca County, goes another 200 years.
Correct.
And by having programs like you put on today, I think it's a good start for us to be able to address those issues that were not talked about when we started our careers and stuff like that.
Well, I don't want to get too much bigger. Hey, you keep talking how good my program is, so we ain't gonna keep talking about me. But no, I agree. It's about putting things in place to make people better. Because if you're not leaving a legacy, what are you doing? Like, you're just collecting a check.
Yep.
And if you're not trying to build for the future, because it's true. I mean, why? And I love that you have that concept, because a lot of people are like, well, I'm here. When I leave, I don't care what happens. No, you can't think like that.
Don't be loyal to me. Be loyal to the office.
Yeah, because you're gonna leave. I mean, I've seen sheriffs in other capacities. They're there for 10 terms, which can be like 40 years.
Yes.
It's like, well, what did you do in your 40 years? What did you do in your 10 terms, or whatever that might look like? And can the place still survive without you? And if it can't, I always tell people as leaders, no matter where you are, if you say, oh, this place isn't gonna work without me, that means that's part of the problem.
Right.
If the place cannot function, because I've worked 3 different agencies. The other 2 functioned completely fine without me there. Not saying that I had a big role, but I never wanted to be that person that they relied on me so much that they couldn't be self-sufficient, because then they're looking to you for all the answers versus making their own decisions.
Correct. Yeah, you're not training, you're not helping anybody in their career if you're making all the decisions for everybody. And if you can't take a vacation because you're afraid that things are going to fall apart or whatever, then you need to do some self-reflection. Now, I do admit that first year, there was a lot of hours and there was a lot of stress and stuff like that, but we're at a point now where, you know, we can go away for a conference, we can go away to a 10-day vacation or something, like me, my chief deputy, the captains, and know that the people that we're mentoring and we're coaching to come behind us, because we're going to be gone. Again, these are just seats that we're filling at the time, and then the next person up is going to have your spot. And you know what? If you're doing that or you're not doing it, your agency's still going to survive. But are they going to survive better if you leave those people better trained, or if you have to train them up for a year, and then your agency's going to suffer that year while this person learns the job or whatever? So you're right. We have to think about the next generations coming up into all the positions throughout your agency.
Yeah, because in 200 years, you've had a few different people in that seat.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I can show you the pictures in the hallways.
Hey, trust me, whoever the first, if they were still here after 200 years, then I would be nervous.
That's right.
So I definitely don't want that person. So we know there's people that's going to have to fill the seats after. So, all right. Any final, actually, no, before I say that, where can people find you if they're looking to hear more about Fred Stevens in Seneca County?
Yeah, so my email address is sheriff, and that's 1 R and 2 Fs. A lot of people misspell that.
I misspelled it.
And then it'll bounce back to your email. You're like, I thought he told me it was sheriff. So sheriff with 1 R and 2 Fs. This is all lowercase, sheriff at SenecaCountyOhio.gov.
Very easy.
It's an email.
Easy.
And I answer all my emails. I answer all my phone calls. It may not be immediately, but I make sure that I get back with the constituents who are my bosses. In our organizational chart, if you look on our annual report on our website, you will see that the sheriff is listed just like, the deputy chief, or the chief deputy, and then the captains and the lieutenants and stuff, just like any organizational chart. But above that, I have a box that says residents of Seneca County, because I truly believe that we're here to serve our constituents. And now that I'm elected as chief, I was appointed, but I'm a sheriff, so I'm elected to an office, and the people that elected me are my bosses and stuff. So we have a website. Make sure it's Seneca County, Ohio. There is a Seneca County, New York. We kind of get their emails, and they kind of get our emails, and, and people.
I can't fix this in the East Coast. How am I supposed to fix this?
Exactly. So it's Seneca County, Ohio, and we have a sheriff's app as well.
So if you're looking for him, reach out. LinkedIn as well.
Yep,
At least I know that's another thing, obviously. But if you're looking for something specific to Seneca County, you have the website, the email address, and the app. So make sure you reach out to them. Any final words for the viewers?
No, I'm just appreciative that we can bring these type of programs to our agency. It takes work, it takes effort to have these type of programs, to have that type of culture in your agency, but it's well worth it. It ends up paying dividends as the progress is being made in any of your agencies. So I'm proof of it. I've been doing this for 33 years in law enforcement, 2 different agencies now, actually 3. I took a broken village, small part-time position as a police chief there, part-time while I was still a sergeant at the city of Tiffin. Fixed that with these type of principles, and then carried that on to the city of Tiffin, and then that's what propelled me out here into the county to bring all that out to all the residents of Seneca County. So I know that it works. I know that these type of programs and the empathetic and the servant leadership works, because I've practiced it, and it has fulfilled a part of me that I wouldn't be in law enforcement. We talked about passion earlier, and I said that you have to be passionate, and if you're not, then you need to look at a different job. So I'd said since day one when I started this career field that the day that I stopped having passion for my job, I need to get out of it. And now that I'm at the point where I can retire, then I need to retire. So if I'm not passionate.
Yeah, and it's important to know that. And a lot of times you hear people say training, and they use it as kind of like a cliche word, but actually executing and implementing programs, bringing people in, or just having development within your own staff, sending people out to train, whatever it might be, is extremely important. I know I try not to, since we're in the final words, I try not to bring up, but something you said and something we talked about last night was your deputy and your captain are all able to go to a training.
Yes.
So through leadership and development, most people can't let their 4th or 5th in charge just take over. So since through leadership training, since you actually have trained your staff, now you have that trust. So part of all the programs and the development is that, because that's the proof in the pudding, as people say. Like that's what it's at. So for all of you listening, whether you're in law enforcement, you're a relative law enforcement, you're thinking about law enforcement, you're a vendor, whatever it might be, training is just not a cliche. It's something that you can and should do often, consistently, and with a plan, because you may not see the fruits of training right away. We never do. But when something bad happens, we say, oh, it's a training issue. But over time, that training is going to build the culture that you're trying to achieve and accomplish. So as you go forward, make sure that when you review this video and you're like, well, what was the point? Leadership and training, it's quite simple. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Like John Maxwell, a quote I love to use, and it's true. If you're in a leadership role and you have the authority or the ability to bring people in, or just to have localized training for, let's say you have a great trainer at your department right now, or your office, bring them, let them do that. Think about things that are outside of the box, because people want that. We talked about millennials wanting that. People of all generations would like training because it's important, and it's going to save you in the long run. So I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate you watching this, me getting a chance to spend time with you, Fred, on this podcast, and obviously here in Seneca County. If you all need anything, you know how to reach him. You definitely know how to reach me if you're watching this. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any questions, reach out. If not, be safe and have a great day.
You've been listening to the LEO First Podcast. Michael has been in law enforcement since 2005. He's worked for 3 law enforcement agencies in 3 different states. He's a professional speaker who travels the country teaching about leadership development and self-awareness. And he's the author of a book called Greatness Beyond the Badge: The 3 Key Principles for Self-Awareness. It's Michael's passion to bring law enforcement members' stories to the front, so you get the real and raw take. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Michael on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Michael Laidler, on Twitter at Michael A. Laidler, on Facebook at Michael Laidler Leadership. Send an email to michael@michaellaidler.com and hit the website at michaellaidler.com. See you next time on the LEO First Podcast.